They say every child learns to speak, but what if the first words you ever spoke changed the fate of a whole village? In a land where storms obeyed a baby's voice and silence carried prophecy, one mother must choose between protecting her son and unveiling the truth that could rewrite the laws of life and death. In the heart of an African village, a mother gives birth beneath a sky that flashes with lightning yet gives no rain. The elders whisper of ancient spirits, of a child marked by the ancestors. At just 1 year old, he speaks, not with laughter, but with warnings that come true. The people call him chosen, cursed, and divine. His name is Tunde, the child whose voice could move the heavens, and whose silence would one day teach the world to listen.
Fair African Tales. Subscribe and turn on the bell for new stories.
In the heart of the old land, where the morning mist kissed the clay roofs of a humble village, there lived a woman named Aduni. Her laughter was gentle, her hands never idle, and her heart vast enough to hold both sorrow and joy. She was known by the people not for wealth, nor for beauty alone, but for her kindness, the kind that lingered like the scent of rain on dry earth. For many seasons, Aduni's home was filled only with silence and prayer. Each sunrise she would sit beneath the ancient baobab tree, humming the same lullaby she had learned as a child, though she had no child yet to sing it to. The women would whisper softly when she passed, "May the ancestors hear her song." And one day, it seemed, they finally did. It was the season of ripened yams when the sky split open with flashes of light, yet no thunder followed. The air stood still, and even the crickets forgot their songs. Elders said such nights were rare, when lightning danced without sound and the spirits walked the earth unseen. Inside her small hut, Adoni clutched her belly as the first pain struck. She whispered through sweat and tears, "O ancestors, walk with me. Let my song be heard tonight." As the lightning faded into silence, a child's cry rose into the night, strong, clear, and full of life. Aduni looked upon her newborn son, whose eyes were open, wide, and calm, as though he already understood the world he had entered. The midwife stepped back in awe. "He did not wail long," she murmured. "It is as if he already knows his name." And Aduni, with trembling lips, whispered, "Tunde." It meant he who has returned. Outside, the villagers gathered under the starlit sky. They watched the clouds swirl into shapes unseen before, a serpent, a drum, and a single eye that glowed before fading into the heavens. The oldest among them, Baba Ogunlola, spoke softly. "A child born under a silent storm carries the voice of those beyond." And so the village waited, for they knew the ancestors never sent their voice without purpose. Aduni held her son close that night, humming her old lullaby once more. But this time the song felt different, as though 100 unseen voices hummed with her. And when the dawn came, it found her still awake, gazing at her child, whispering, "Whatever you have come to do, my son, may love be your guide." The wind outside carried her words into the baobab leaves, and for the first time in years, the tree swayed without breeze, as if it, too, had begun to listen. Under the warmth of many suns, little Tunde grew fast and strong. His eyes followed the world with quiet knowing, as though he studied every leaf and shadow. He did not babble like other children. He only listened to footsteps, to whispers, to the murmur of wind through the baobab leaves. Aduni would sing to him each evening, her soft hums floating through the hut. And sometimes she thought she heard him echo her tune in silence, his lips still but his gaze alive. Then, one bright afternoon, when the sky shimmered with lazy heat, the village gathered for market day. Aduni sat in the shade, shelling beans, her boy beside her playing with smooth stones. The air was still. Too still, the elders would later say. Tunde suddenly stopped his play. He lifted his head, eyes searching the sky, and spoke, not with the uncertain babble of a baby, but with the calm tone of a grown man who knew what he said. "Mamma," he whispered, "don't dry the clothes outside. The storm will come tonight." Aduni froze. Her hands trembled. The other women laughed softly at first. A storm? The sky was clear, not a cloud in sight. But something in her child's voice made Aduni's heart race. It was too measured, too sure. She gathered the clothes inside, just as he said. The sun fell and the night came softly, until the wind rose with a sudden cry. Clouds rolled from nowhere, dark and swollen. Lightning flashed and thunder tore open the sky. The villagers scrambled, shouting and praying, as rain fell in roaring sheets. By dawn, the fields lay flat beneath muddy water. Yams were lost, roofs torn, and paths washed away. But one hut stood untouched, Aduni's. The elders came to see, their faces pale with awe. They looked from the safe home to the quiet child in his mother's arms, staring through them as if listening to something far beyond their words. That morning, no one laughed. Whispers began to drift through the market like smoke. The boy speaks of things before they come. He called the rain. He speaks for spirits. Aduni held her son tighter, pressing her cheek to his head. She wanted to believe it was coincidence, a child's luck, but deep within, she felt the truth bloom like thunder behind clouds. Tunde looked up at her, eyes bright with something ancient, and said softly, "Mama, the sky listens when I speak." And from that day, silence never felt simple again. The story of the child spread beyond the winding paths of the village. Travellers from distant lands came bearing offerings of cowries, grain, and woven cloth, hoping to hear a word from the boy who spoke before the rain. They came not only out of wonder, but out of need, for the earth had grown unpredictable and the people hungered for certainty. Aduni tried to turn them away. "He is only a child," she would plead. "He needs play, not prophecy." But they would not listen. They knelt before her hut, whispering prayers, pressing gifts at her door. Some called Tunde the rain caller, others the mouth of the sky. And though the boy never sought to be heard, his words carried like wind through dry grass. Sometimes, as he played with his stones, his voice would change, distant, low, almost not his own. "The river will rise soon," he'd murmur. Or, "Do not travel the northern path. The trees will fall." And each time what he spoke came to pass. But with each vision, his face grew stiller, his sleep more restless. He began to wake at night, eyes wide, whispering names that Aduni did not know. She would cradle him and sing her old lullaby, her voice trembling between faith and fear. One night, as rain whispered against the roof, he woke again. But this time he did not cry. His eyes were far away. "Mama," he said softly, "the rain is speaking now. It says there are shadows coming. It says the people will forget how to listen." Aduni felt the air grow heavy around them. The rain outside changed rhythm, as if echoing the boy's words. She pressed him close, her tears mingling with the drops that fell through the roof. "No more, my child," she begged. "No more words." But the rain did not stop. It poured for 3 days, washing away huts, markets, and fields. When it finally ended, the villagers found strange carvings in the mud, spirals and eyes that no one could explain. Some said they were marks from the spirits who followed the boy. Others said the ancestors had come to listen. When the sun returned, the people gathered outside Aduni's hut. Some bowed their heads, asking the boy to speak again, to bless their farms, to tell their futures. Others came with fear in their eyes, clutching charms, muttering that the child brought bad luck. Aduni stood in the doorway, her son behind her, and faced them all. "He is no god," she said. "He is only a boy." But even as she spoke, a soft wind circled around them, carrying the faint sound of rain, though the sky was clear. And in that haunting whisper, the villagers remembered the saying of old, that when the rain speaks before the thunder, it carries the voice of the forgotten. From that day, the people began to fear the sound of distant drizzle, for they believed the rain had found a tongue again, and it spoke through a child who was far too young to bear its weight. Seasons passed, and the story of the child spread beyond mountains and rivers, beyond the reach of familiar tongues. Traders carried it between markets, of a boy whose words bent the will of storms, whose whispers brought warning before disaster. Some called it myth, others truth. But among those who heard was a man who did not laugh nor doubt. He was a wanderer, a sage who travelled with no companion but silence. He arrived at the village one crimson evening when the sun sank low and the sky burned gold. His robe was dusty, his feet scarred, yet his eyes held the calm of still water. The children who saw him first ran off in awe, whispering that he walked without sound. When he reached Aduni's compound, he bowed low, not as one seeking help, but as one who had come home. Aduni, cautious but courteous, offered him water and a mat. The stranger sat silent for a long while before speaking in a voice that carried the weight of faraway winds. "I have walked 7 lands," he said, following the tale of the boy who speaks with the sky. Aduni's heart clenched. "He is only a child," she murmured, almost pleading. "He never asked for this." The stranger nodded slowly. "That is why I am here, because those who carry voices not their own must be taught how to listen before the world teaches them fear." He asked to see the boy. Tunde came from behind the doorway, barefoot, his small frame outlined by flickering lamplight. Their eyes met, one filled with youth, the other with centuries. The sage smiled faintly, though a shadow passed over his face. "Tunde," he said softly, "do you know whose words you carry?" The boy blinked, hesitant. "I only speak what I hear." "And where do you hear it from?" "The space between thunder and silence," Tunde whispered. "It tells me what must be known." The sage closed his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice trembled with reverence. "Then it is true. The echo has returned." He turned to Aduni, his expression grave. "Once every 100 years, a child is born who carries the voice of the forgotten path, the bridge between the seen and the unseen. They speak only until their purpose is clear, then fall silent, leaving wisdom in their wake." Aduni clutched her wrapper tight. "And what happens when the speaking ends?" The sage looked to the stars. "Silence, mother. Silence that the world will take a century to understand." That night, he remained in their hut, teaching Tunde the ancient song of balance, a melody without words that calmed the restless voice within him. Villagers gathered outside, hearing the faint hum drift through the air, feeling peace for the first time in months. When dawn broke, the sage rose quietly and placed his hand on Tunde's head. You will soon see the weight of light and shadow, he said. But remember, even the sky cannot speak forever. He left before sunrise, vanishing into the mist that curled over the fields. Some said he turned into smoke. Others swore they saw footprints that glowed and then faded behind him. From that day, Tunde spoke less, not out of fear, but understanding. The silence between his words began to matter more than the words themselves. And when the rain next fell, it came gently, as though the sky too had learned to listen. Darkness crept upon the village not from the sky, but from the hearts of men. At first it came quietly, a whisper of envy carried through the markets, a question murmured by the fireside. Why should one child hold the voice of the ancestors while others are left unheard? Tunde's silence, once seen as wisdom, began to anger those who hungered for power. Chiefs sought him out, demanding that he speak of their fortunes in trade and war. Merchants brought gifts of gold dust and goats, pleading for words that would make their fields flourish. But when the boy refused, their reverence turned to resentment. They say he can call rain, one farmer spat. Then why does he not call it for us? Another hissed. The mother hides his power. She keeps it for herself. Aduni felt the village turning. Eyes that once gazed with awe now glared with suspicion. Children no longer played near their hut. Elders crossed the path when she passed. The peace that had once filled her home began to tremble under the weight of rumour. Then one night, as the moon hung red over the treetops, a group of men came. Their faces were hidden behind masks of woven leaves, their torches crackling like angry spirits. They demanded Tunde. "Let the boy speak for the village," they shouted. "If he holds the ear of the sky, let him prove it." Aduni stood firm at her doorway, the boy clinging to her wrapper. "You will not use my child as a tool for your greed," she said. But the men pushed closer, and one raised his torch. The air filled with heat and shouts, until suddenly a gust of wind howled through the street. The flames bent backward, swallowing their own fire. The men stumbled, terrified, and in that chaos, Aduni seized her chance. She took Tunde's hand, and together they ran, past the huts, past the fields, into the whispering forest beyond the village. They ran until their breath broke into sobs and their feet met the cool mud beside the river. The night was heavy, thick with mist. Aduni fell to her knees, trembling. "Oh, ancestors," she wept, "have mercy on my child." From the darkness a voice rose, low and fluid, like water speaking in a dream. "Mercy is not ours to give, mother, only truth." The river shimmered, and from its depths rose 3 figures made of light and mist, spirits of the current, eyes glowing like stars reflected on water. Tunde stepped forward without fear. The spirits spoke as one. "The gift your child carries is not his own. It is the echo of what was morning came softly over the forest, gilding the world in pale gold. Mist curled above the great river, moving like breath between the trees. Adoni and her son had made a small shelter by its edge, their lives now quiet, hidden from the noise of men. Yet in that silence, Tunde grew stiller, stranger, his eyes following things unseen, his hands sometimes trembling as though he held the wind itself. Days passed like whispers. Aduni sang to him, cooked from what the forest gave, and prayed the world would forget them. But the world never forgets what it fears or wonders about. Traders still spoke of the boy who commanded the rain, and in the distance, the sky seemed to shift whenever his name was uttered. One dusk, when the air smelled of rain, yet the sky remained clear, Tunde sat by the river watching the water flow. His small feet dangled above the surface, his face calm but distant. Aduni watched him with the same ache that had lived in her since his first word, love wrapped in worry. He turned to her suddenly, his voice softer than wind. "Mama, it's time." Her chest tightened. "Time for what, my son?" "For the last words," he said, "the ones that are not mine." She knelt beside him, her hands trembling as they brushed his hair. "You don't have to, Tunde. Let the world wait. Let the silence hold you." He smiled faintly. "But Mama, I am the silence." The river darkened as clouds began to gather overhead. The air thickened, the forest hushed. Even the birds fell quiet, as though the earth itself leaned closer. Then Tunde spoke, his voice no longer that of a child, but something older, fuller, woven with echoes that seemed to come from both sky and water. "I am not voice," he said. "I am bridge, the space where words become meaning, the path between what is seen and what is remembered." Aduni's tears fell freely. "Please," she whispered, "don't leave me." Tunde looked at her with infinite calm. "I was never here to stay, Mama. I was here to remind them that truth is not thunder. It is the quiet after." The first raindrop fell, gentle, hesitant. Then another. And then the heavens opened. The storm poured as if the sky itself grieved. The river swelled, its waters rising with a force that glowed faintly blue beneath the rain. Aduni tried to hold her son, but he stood at the edge, unmoving. "Do not fear," he said softly. "This river carries not death but memory." A brilliant flash of light crossed the sky, and when her eyes cleared, he was gone. The river flowed calm once more, its surface unbroken, except for a single circle where he had stood, a ripple that refused to fade. Aduni fell to her knees, sobbing into the storm, yet even through her tears, she felt warmth in her chest, as if a voice whispered within her heart, "I am not lost. I am the silence between your prayers." The rain slowed, the forest sighed, and somewhere in the rhythm of the water, the world began to listen again. Years folded into years, like leaves pressed within the book of time. The world had changed, but the river still flowed, carrying whispers of what once was. The forest had swallowed the ruins of the old village, and new homes rose not far away, where laughter returned and songs replaced the shouts that had once filled the night. Aduni lived there still, her hair now silver, her hands thin and marked by time, yet her eyes remained bright, the same steady flame that had guided her through storms both earthly and unseen. Children gathered around her hut every evening, their faces glowing in the firelight. They came not for food, but for the stories that lived in her voice. "Tell us about the boy again, Mama Aduni," they would plead, "the one who spoke to the sky." And she would smile, slow and wistful. "Ah, my child Tunde," she would say. "He did not speak to the sky, he spoke for it, and sometimes the sky listened too closely." Her words would drift into the night, mingling with the hum of insects and the sigh of wind through the trees. The children would listen, wide-eyed, holding their breath as she spoke of the lightning with no thunder, the rain that spoke, and the river that carried her son into forever. In her later years, Aduni walked often to the riverbank where she had last seen him. She would sit beneath the same baobab tree, its roots like the fingers of old gods, its leaves whispering secrets to the wind. Sometimes, when the air grew still, she could almost hear him, the echo of a laugh, the hint of a voice that felt too familiar to be memory. Once, as dusk fell and the first fireflies woke, a young girl followed her there. "Mama Aduni," she asked softly, "do you ever wish he had stayed?" Aduni looked up at the sky, where the fading light painted gold upon blue. "No," she said gently, "he was never meant to stay. Some souls are not born to live long, only long enough to remind us to listen." The girl frowned. "Listen to what?" "To everything," Aduni whispered. "To the rain before it falls, the silence between heartbeats, the truth hiding inside small things." A gust of wind stirred the trees, and for a moment it seemed to hum, low, rhythmic, like a child's voice caught between laughter and song. The girl gasped. "Did you hear that?" Aduni only smiled. "Yes," she murmured, "the wind remembers." As the years carried her toward her own twilight, her story grew with her, spreading from fireside to market, from one village to another. And wherever people gathered to speak of wonders and warnings, they ended with the same words. When the wind passes through the baobab trees, it listens still, for the child who spoke too soon. If this tale moved you, there are countless more waiting to be told. Stories born from the heart of Africa, where mystery meets meaning. Don't let the next story pass you by. Subscribe now to Fair African Tales and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another journey through wonder, wisdom, and the unseen. Until next time, may your heart always listen, even when the world grows silent.
Subscribe for more amazing African stories.